Anything that's going to be lucrative and sustainable, it starts from the top down. The adage that you often use with this is, are you who you are looking for is looking for?
Clay Allen, what's up, buddy?
How's it going, Mr. Mayo?
Doing well. How are you?
Fantastic.
Welcome as first-time guest on the podcast.
Happy to be here.
That's right. I bet a lot of people know who you are because you're mildly famous.
It's a stretch.
Yeah?
I am a professional disc golfer. First many have met.
Are you actually
welcome.
a pro now?
Yes.
So you got your pro card?
Just make that transition. Yeah.
You just started playing like a few years ago, right?
About 3. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Is it, now, I don't mean to offend you, is it a sport that like a mildly athletic person can go pro in 3 years, or is that just you being really
Absolutely.
I got to be honest. It's pretty much my athletic prowess.
Yeah. There's some skill involved, but it's just figuring out how to make a discipline.
Well, look, we're going to find out all about your athletic background soon enough. But did you prepare yourself? Do you have a did you know?
I do.
Shoot. What you got?
I arrived a little early last night, so I started doing some reading in the area.
Did you?
And I don't know if I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but there's this Italian spot right up the road in Roswell.
Yeah.
Their chef just passed away.
No way. Yeah.
He passed away.
Oh, you didn't say that. You said passed away.
I did indeed.
Rookie.
Yeah, it was
rookie status. There's a lot of pressure in here, man. I get it. All right, you get this?
All right, hit me.
Did you know male garter snakes, I'm having to read this. Male garter snakes that need extra warmth after hibernating will mimic females in order to trick other males into trying to mate with them so they can cuddle and steal their body heat. Did you or did you not use this technique while you were at the Citadel?
I did not.
You didn't trick anyone into thinking you were female so you could use their body heat to keep you warm at night?
No.
All right, good to know. Anyway.
Yeah, we had wool.
Well,
uniforms.
That being said, let's find out more about Clay. Yeah, we actually wore clothes.
Yeah.
Did you know?
Yeah, did you know?
I've heard things. I mean, my kid went to the Naval Academy. I get it. It's weird shit goes on there. There's a lot of guys. It's like a sword fight, and sometimes stuff gets weird. But I've never done it, but I can only talk to experts like Clay who have. That being said, tell us who you are. First of all, like, who is he to me? He's a good dude, and he is our, what's your official title?
I
VP?
am the Director of Development.
So he is the Director of Development for Alloy Personal Training. Now, we use an FSO, which stands for Franchise Sales Organization, and Clay represents our brand for that franchise sales organization. So he just works on Alloy only. And today we're going to talk about what he has seen that makes a good Alloy candidate, because he has to walk them through he doesn't have to. They do a great job of walking him through a 6-step sales process. And, he's been the bulk of our 100 plus franchisees we've sold. So we're going to ask him some really interesting questions about what makes a good candidate. But first of all, tell us about your background, because I think it's interesting how you got here. And I think to me, it's one of the things that makes you good at as being our director. But tell us your background.
I appreciate that. I've been in the human performance world, we'll call it, for over a decade. So was a college athlete down at the Citadel, planned on going into medicine. But
did you play football there?
Football and track and field. Track and field picked up my education. I was a javelin thrower. And yes, I'm expecting a Revenge of the Nerds reference at some point today. But
all right.
Went there, planned on going into medicine. My college strength coach got his hooks in me, so I actually ended up becoming a college strength coach. I bounced around the country doing that, got my MBA while I was doing that, and from there I was actually picked off by Sornex Exercise Equipment.
Yep.
And what I did for them was design, sell, and implement weight rooms. So this was working
mostly in like athletic settings?
I mean, this was anything from like Joe Rogan, Jeff Bezos home gym, all the way up to your professional and collegiate venues, partnership with the UFC, and everything in between.
Right.
So, perfect transition for me at the time, kept me amongst that world, allowed me to use my MBA. And while being there, I had the opportunity to develop the corporate/franchising arm. So I was working with your large corporations like Lifetime, Equinox, down to your heavy hitters in franchising. So like D1, Orange Theory, Athletic Republic, Exos,
right.
You name it. So that got my feet wet in franchising and gave me a very deep familiarity with the space as far as what's out there. I got introduced to Repham Group, more specifically Alloy, started doing my digging, and I realized that this opportunity was unique because Alloy is more or less operating in white space, a little opinion based, but
We are. That's not opinion. Nothing but facts are spit on this podcast. That is a fact.
In regards to who we're targeting,
Right.
the 45 to 65-year-old, how it's being implemented, small group personal training, and the strong roots that you and your team bring to the table. So I put my name in the hat, was onboarded in June of this past year. It's been an absolute blessing. Franchising, very glad I found it at 30 and beyond blessed that it was your brand.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, look, man, it's we had a couple runs at it with a few other folks, and it was like, give me a fitness dude. And it's like you would think you don't need fitness, but I'm telling you, there's something to be said about a little bit of passion and knowledge about what you're doing, because even a visceral response to like who's on the other end, like you're a really fit guy. When that Zoom call pops up and you're doing calls with candidates, if you're sitting there as someone who is not fit or doesn't represent fitness well, even though you may have all the facts about our franchise and it doesn't take a fit person to present a franchise opportunity to someone, there's a visceral reaction to the other person that's kind of like, it's a little bit, it's just odd, right? 100%. It would be like if a guy as pasty as me was doing like a tanning salon and they pops up and they're like, it's like Casper. It would just be weird. It just doesn't mix.
I mean, it's never too late to look like leather.
That's true. That's true. Well, I guess that's true. I could get in the tanning bed.
Yeah.
I might even consider that now.
Something to
I'm
think
that
about.
age. That was my era, by the way. Muscle pants, fanny packs, and tanning beds.
Absolutely.
I know. I'm pretty sure the wheels are going to fall off. I'm going to drive off a cliff in about a year and look 400 years old. I'm already 73. I think I look pretty good. All right. So I want to ask you some questions about your experience getting to this point. So of the candidates that come to you, they're typically coming from what we would call the broker network. They hate being called brokers, but franchise consultants. And essentially what they're doing is going out and working their networks and finding candidates who want a new investment opportunity or a change in career path or whatever that might be. And then they bring them to you. What are the common motivators that you see for people, because they're choosing us to then get on that first call with you? There's something that was interesting to them. So what is it?
It's interesting because we have such a broad spectrum of people that are now franchisees that are with us and candidates that are coming through the process. I mean, these are anywhere from former gym owners to government lobbyists and everything in between. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a type of person or profession that's attracted to this.
Not like a subset. Like, if you did this, you'll like this. It's not that.
But the majority of candidates we're presenting to, they fall within our target market, the 45 to 65-year-old.
Right.
And they either have a passion for fitness already, or they have the understanding, the importance of the fact that needs to have some sort of precedent put in people's life. You have to pay the piper.
Yes.
And the fact that we're targeting the 45 to 65-year-old crowd, the people that have the lion's share of the nation's disposable wealth, and we're able to charge twice the industry average, they see that value. And this still allows them, based on our model, the majority of our franchisees are the semi-absentees. So they can maintain their corporate job, create that supplemental into income replacement, and should they so choose down the road, cut the ties with corporate America. And this allows them to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it is true. I mean, and I don't think it's hard for me to believe that in this day and age, there's anyone out there who hasn't read something or heard something in the news or talked to a friend and doesn't somehow connect the dots that being fit, whatever that means, getting to a healthier place is not beneficial for you. Would you agree?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And so I don't think it's a difficult task anymore to say like, hey, if you exercise, you might be helping, the people in your community. When we did the things we've learned, top 5 things we've learned in 100 franchises awarded, one of the things I said first that I was surprised that I was surprised, if that makes sense. And it was that to a person on the CEO call or at Discovery Day, which is the last step in the process, everyone talks about purpose. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Have you noticed that? Like everyone's like if I literally ask in 5 different ways, why alloy, right? Sometimes literally that question. And people will just say, well, first of all, it had to make sense in the pro forma, because if it doesn't get return on investment, it's a game stopper, right? And as it should be. And then beyond that, it's like, well, I want to do something that means something. And if they've been a sort of a cog in a big wheel and in a big corporation, and maybe they're making widgets, and they can maybe connect the dots on how people's lives get better, but it's not as tangible as what we do. To a person, everyone's like, I want to do something with purpose, whether it's in addition to, or I want to pivot away from and go full on into this. It's like, I want to do something with purpose. So do you hear that same thing?
I do. And it's it's one of the unique facets about this brand that I personally love is the fact that we're creating a community. That's part of the mission statement, helping people look good, feel great, and live their lives to the fullest. So be able to do the things that they love well into their golden years. So the fact that you're able to create a community around that's rather than taking a birdshot approach with fitness, one size fits all, it's more of a scalpel approach. So it's a lot more targeted. They're receiving the treatment that's going to allow them to not only do those things, but do it at a sustainable rate for a longer time. The fact that you can create that community and make some money on the back end, what else is there, right?
Yeah.
As far as
you're right. I mean, look, at the end of the day, like if you told somebody, hey, you can make good money if you run the play right, and maybe do multiple locations, you can do really well. And by the way, you get to change lives, make a difference for people. It's like, I don't know who wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I'm always baffled. I think, I've talked to people that maybe didn't make it far in the process and they're like, yeah, I think I'm going to do some home service thing or something. I'm like, why in the hell would you want to do roofing or gutters when you can do fitness? It's like, it's the dumbest thing ever, but I don't know. Maybe there's just a disconnect in fitness, but for the most part, there's not a person you've seen it. Like we'll be up against 4 or 5 other franchises in the process, and purpose is a big deal. And we speak to it. It's woven into our core values and the way we do everything. And we always win. Typically we beat all the other franchises, and sometimes they're not other fitness franchises. That's surprising for people to know, is that, hey, some people might be looking at, again, gutters, trees removal, us, and one other thing, that's unrelated. And it's like, oh, interesting. And so when it's that person, it's very easy to say like, well, I mean, you can go do those things, but do you want to make a difference in people's lives or not?
Hear it all the time.
I mean, I had a tree removed a couple of years ago and it was great, but I didn't really feel any different the next day. And my neighbors could have gave 2 shits that I didn't improve anyone's life.
Well, I mean, your house might feel a little safer now.
Maybe. And one of my neighbors lost a little shade, so I maybe affected their lives negatively, but I really don't like them that much. So I'm okay with that. Anyway, moving right along. If they're listening, good to see you guys. So
sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, exactly. This goes back to me hanging a flag on my deck, which they made me alter. I built this smoke and cool deck, and some guy didn't like it, and I didn't get it fully approved because I kind of stretched the rules. Go figure. So I purchased a defund the HOA sign and hung it off of my deck while it was being deconstructed, which really sent him over the edge. It was great. It's great.
Yeah,
I got a lot of time on my hands these days, Clay.
Fun fact about Rick: big deck guy.
Got big deck energy. All right, main qualities then. So that's the main motivator. But what qualities are you looking for before you introduce them to us? And I think it's important to understand that a lot of people don't make it to the process where they make it to the CEO call and then they make it here to meet us. What qualities are you looking for out of a candidate to get them to Alloy?
You alluded to this a bit earlier. I'm very fortunate in the fact that I have a great team within Rep'em and incredible consultants that qualify leads before they even get to me. So this is anything from making sure they're financially qualified to making sure that this aligns with their objectives and all that good stuff. So I don't really need to dig too deep into that.
But that is handled on the front end. And if we're getting someone from a franchise consultant, that's part of the work they do, which is why they're paid handsomely, as they should be. They bring to you, which is us as an extension, a really well-qualified candidate. Yep. And they're prepared to understand how the franchise process works and to do all the other things. So what other qualities are you looking for? So those are sort of the tactical qualities, right? Yeah.
So that stuff is addressed on the front end. By the time they get to me, I mean, I'm spending hours on Zoom calls with people, face-to-face, getting to know them. And there's 3 big things I'm looking for during these calls. And some of these actually call back to some of our core ethos here at Alloy.
Yep.
The first one is going to be unimpeachable character. So
how would that manifest itself for you in the sales process?
There's tripwires, for lack of a better term. So it's going to be, it's going to be things like if you make a commitment, right?
Like if I say I'll be on this call tomorrow at 8 a.m.
Yep.
And they don't show, or they have a last minute excuse, not a good sign.
Check. That's a little ding against you. Yeah. All right. Or life happens. I get it. What does that communication look like? Are you reaching out to me and let me know what's going on? I'm more than happy to accommodate things along those lines, but it's just understanding how the person operates within that framework, because at the end of the day, that is a franchise. holding the franchisees accountable, having those open lines of communication, and being responsive, right? So that's one big one. That leads into the next one, which is competitive spirit. So this is, you definitely talk to this a lot, especially during discovery days, but we're looking for those people that have an edge about them. All right. We don't want the people that kind of get to like the 125 when the capacity is sitting around 130 and they're just like, I'm comfy, I'm good.
Right.
We want the people that are going to push the needle. All right. So they want to get to that 130. They want to push the brand forward. They want to be part of the growth. And that's, just one of my good friends. His name was Joe. And the phrase that he always had was, if you're juiceless, you're useless.
I love that.
He was a strength coach.
Right.
You can see where that would apply there.
I could see it.
Yeah, but it's the same, man. If you don't have that energy, that charisma about you, which leads into the third one, can you lead? Because this is very much a people-oriented brand. We focus on community and a little opinion-based, but anything that's going to be lucrative and sustainable, it starts from the top down. So the adage that you often use with this is, are you who you are looking for is looking for?
Right.
You want to speak to that?
Yeah. I mean, look, I've said it a million times. I heard it on a podcast, and it was in relation to a young lady who was talking to her mother. And the mother was, asking her, like, she's still single and she wants to find her ideal man. So the daughter lays out this laundry list of like attributes that she wants in a man. I want to make this much income. He's caring. He does, all these things. She basically models out like the perfect person, right? And so in the most heartbreaking way, her mother looks at her and said, "Oh, honey, you're not the person that you're looking for is looking for." Which essentially means, like, if you want to attract that type of person, you have to be the type of person that would attract that person. And at that point in time, in a heartbreaking way, she was saying, you're not that person right now. You're not going to attract that man or spouse or partner, whatever that may be. So when we often use that because when I'm looking at candidates on the CEO call, and apparently you are too, which is great to get them to those last stages. I have to have a conversation with this person. I always ask about leadership background because I want to know, it's going to be really key that they're not probably going to stand in their facility and service revenue, but they're going to need to attract someone that can. So think about, what does the face of a local fitness studio look and act like, right? They're probably 100%. Well put together. They're fit. They're healthy. They've got great energy, and they're going to be the face of the business. So if you aren't the type of person that can attract that type of candidate, because maybe you've worked in tech your whole life and you never leave the basement and you don't have any friends groups. And it's like, that's going to be difficult if you're socially awkward to attract that type of person. So I'm looking for the same thing. And that's what that means essentially.
Not saying people in IT are unsociable. We've met plenty that are.
Listen to our franchise dev guy having a heart attack. Like, wait. We got a lot of people in IT.
Pump the brakes.
I'm not saying that. I'm just using that as an example. Maybe you're just maybe you just are a gamer in your basement. And you've come into some family money. Probably not our person. That type of thing.
So back to that question, I'm looking. This is a mutual evaluation process. At the end of the day, we want to make sure Alloy's right, not only for our candidates, but they're right for Alloy. We want to grow in a sustainable way. That's how we're going to do it. We don't want to just sell these to anyone that's going to buy. We want to find the right people that are going to help this thing grow. So those are the things I'm looking for on the front end, and how I'm assessing as we're going through the process. Can you follow the simple requests? Are you responsive? Do you have that type of energy? Are you the type of person that can lead? Do you have that background? So those are the big things I'm looking for as I'm taking candidates through the process.
Yeah, perfect. I love it. Well, obviously you get us really well because we're looking for the same things in the later stages of the process.
Yep.
Right. And I'm glad you said that. I think it's surprising for some people. That's why Clay isn't, sort of his title isn't like franchise sales, because it's really not a sale. I mean, really, it's a partnership at the end of the day. We take it very seriously. Like, we have to have good partners. Period. And I think it's the most aligned business I've ever been a part of, because I don't make money unless you make money in a franchise situation. So I don't want a bad partner, not because I don't like you or whatever, but I have to know that you're going to take our brand and move it forward so that it's a viable, economic investment for you, but also, are you going to help the brand move forward?
Yep.
Are you going to go out and hustle and get a good operator and make money so that we can make money? I mean, that's the business. We help people, but we also want to make money. So
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, franchising's calculated risk. But I tell candidates this all the time on the front end. I am not here to sell you. I'm here to educate you so you can make the best possible decision for you and your family. That is not the way this is structured. This is an education process. Like you said, it's 4 to 6 weeks, very structured, deliberate in the way that we're delivering this information so the candidates have all the information they need to make the best possible decision.
That's the best way to sell anyway, right?
100%.
Just educate them. I mean, they're on the call because they're interested.
It doesn't come off as hokey at that point because it's not, right?
Well, and one thing that I didn't realize, and I hear this from candidates, so props to you because they always say like what a great experience it's been working with Clay. He's very transparent. It's very upfront. But, to your, the folks that you're working with, the Rep 'em team has a really well laid out 6-step sales process. So there are many tripwires to your point earlier, but also we do a lot of things that maybe other brands don't. Like we provide, folks with a very detailed unit economics pro forma, explain how it works. All the item 19, which is the claims for financials are in there. All the item 7, which is the expenses are in there. And it allows you to build a very relevant model. I was under the impression that everyone did that, but apparently not, because sometimes we'll get people here and they're like, hey, I really enjoyed the process. Clay was amazing. The pro forma and the unit economics call was so good. I didn't get that from any other franchise. And I'm always astounded. I'm like, you would buy a franchise without any sort of view into the financials and what the return on investment would be. I'm like, what are you thinking?
Yeah. And they're like, oh, I love that spreadsheet so much. And I'm like, I'm happy.
Right.
I'm glad.
Yeah,
we give you all the tools to pull the wires, stress test this thing, do your ultra conservative rose colored glasses to make sure it's going to work for you. Because that's the conceptual.
Yep.
And then once we get on the tail end, that's when you hit the validation. You get to speak to our existing franchisees, all leading up to discovery day. That's when we're aligning the emotional side of things. Can you see yourself doing this for the next 10 years?
Can you see yourself working with these folks? Can we see ourselves working with you? Yeah, I love it. It's a great process. So of the questions, and this might be tough to just pull a few out, but if you had to, what are the top questions you get from candidates?
How much does it cost? How much can I make? Right. And how do I staff it? Which are the 3 biggest ones.
Right.
Any and always. So the how much does it cost? That's an easy one. I can hit that right now. That's going to be the 185 to 452.
Right.
And that's,
item 7. By that 452, I have to say, but now that it used to be 200 to 400. Now it's like 186 to like 452.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that pushed the higher. But when you think about it, we're going into now like Arlington, Virginia, Bethesda, Maryland, Northern and Southern California. I mean, those are expensive markets. And so we have tiered pricing that will mitigate the extra expenses of that. So the model will still work, but it does, when you look at the item 19, there is now a bigger range. We're still kind of falling right in around that 300-ish plus or minus. Right?
Yeah.
To get open in most of our markets, like Texas and other areas is where we're hot. But,
so like 3 to 350. And I would say, to speak to what you just mentioned with the higher tier markets.
Yep.
I mean, the lion's share of that higher range is going to come with the price to play. So the build out costs are going to be a little more expensive in those areas. The rent factor is going to be a little more expensive in those areas. We're factoring in those things that to allow you to be set up for success out the gate.
Right.
And this includes like the tiered pricing structures we have laid out for our franchisees that are going to allow them to offset things like rent factor, employment costs, and leverage up that ROI.
Yeah, in some of those markets, I mean, rent factor is like $10,000 a month, and you're like, wow, for 1,700 square feet, it's like, but in those same markets, one-on-one personal training is priced at an average of $170 an hour. We're going to be able to come in at a third of that. Just by putting them into this small group setting and still delivering personal training. So it's still a good value proposition. And so if you're in one of those markets, you just have to understand what the comparative rates are, and it will work there. Obviously, there's other businesses doing it in those markets. So it'll work really well. So that's what you get as top questions. Given your background, I think this is almost a step back to the start, but I'm just curious about this. So given your background as a strength coach and an athlete, when you were first brought in by Rep 'em to look at, like, can you represent Alloy, what is it to you that stood out? Just maybe even personal knee-jerk reaction stuff.
There were quite a few things. I would say
you don't have to say me personally, but if you want to, you can.
I wasn't going to. I was. Cool. I mean, I alluded to it earlier. The strong roots that you and your cohorts have created here.
See this?
But I would say the simplicity in the model is one of the beautiful things. The fact that this is a low labor model. We're doing personal training in a way that franchisees can scale this.
Right.
that's hard to find.
Yeah.
The digging further into it, I came in here on the front end, one of the first discovery days, and I went through the workout with some of the locals at your corporate location. Just because being the former strength and conditioning coach that I am, I'm like, I want to see the programming, right?
Yep.
What does this look like? So I ended up going through that, and it was great. It was
Did it
just
remind you of like your college strength and conditioning stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I was a track and field athlete,
Right.
javelin, focused on one event. But one of my favorite things about it was going into the weight room with my team, pushing one another, forcing each other to be the best that we could be.
Right.
And that's what that reminds me of in there. So there was that. It was just as challenging for me as it was for the 80-some-year-old next to me that I was training with,
Right.
which was crazy. And, I was looking at the programming going in. But by the end, I was sitting down, rolling out after the workout, and the woman that I ended up training with, she's 80-some years old. She's been training at that location for over 2 decades. She walks up to me and she's like, "Hey, it was great to get to know you. I would love for you to let me know when you're going to be back in town. That way we can catch up." And I was just like,
Well, I think she invited you to go golfing.
She did.
That's awesome.
She did. She does alloy because it helps her golf game.
Yeah.
Helps,
Well,
keep everything the way it needs to be so she can perform out there. And I was just like, oh, this makes sense.
yeah.
Because I wasn't going in there to create those relationships, but it literally happened in 45 minutes.
Right. And completely organically.
Yeah. Wasn't forced.
Right.
Yeah. It was nuts. And the last one for me is just going to be the staying power of this. We're not reliant on a specific technology or a single modality as the research science behind human performance continues to grow. We can just as easily adapt with that. So there's not going to be one of those things that comes out a year from now that's going to make what we do obsolete. Right. So there's staying power in this. And I was just like, okay, that's all I need to know.
Yeah. And I know we've talked a lot about that on the podcast, but there are a lot of fitness concepts that are based on a piece of technology or a single modality.
Yep.
And some of those they're good for a minute, right? I would just be really careful if you're listening to this and you're thinking about getting into a fitness franchise, because I've been in business 31 years. I've seen cycling come and go like 4 times. Like, it's hot. It's not. It's hot. It's not. And if you're in a franchise agreement, it's 10 years typically. So you don't want to be in one that's not hot, right? And ours, when people ask like, hey, where's this thing headed? Does this have staying power? Is this a trend? I'm like, dude, I've had the same brand promise on the door for 31 years. We didn't even have computers and no internet in 1992. And we're still doing it today. The way we do it, the technology around it's changed, but it doesn't change the brand promise. So I often think, and I won't throw shade directly at this brand, but there's like 4 of them that are all hitting the market at the same time. It's based on this whack technology. Always comes out of Europe, which somehow makes it mysterious. And it's like, some kind of like if you go get E-stim at therapy, and there's like 4 of them and they're all out at the same time. And I've seen these 4 different waves come through, and people will ask me about it. And it's like, I really can't throw too much shade at it because it looks like I'm, sour grapes, right? Because it's a competitor in some ways. But what I will always say, and I think this probably speaks more to any type of fitness technology that might be out there that an entire brand is based on, I can adopt any of their modalities or technologies into my business without disrupting my brand promise. So if I don't have it in here, that probably tells you everything I need to know. Plus, we are very well connected. The speaking circuit that I'm on. It's the top strength coaches in the world and scientists in every function, from spinal function to, literally strength and conditioning to fascial treatment. It gets so in the weeds, and I love it. If I can reach out to those guys, got them all on my phone on speed dial at any time, and say, what do you think about this technology? And if the best of the best who are paid to perform aren't using it, that's probably a good sign, right? That it doesn't work. So I can reach out to any of these guys. I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? And believe me, if there was something there, I would look at bringing it in as a tool to, better the results of our clients. But typically it's not. And so if you are a franchise candidate who's looking at different things, especially in the fitness space, be very wary of getting into something on trend or based on a technology that can either be, disrupted or disproven at some point. I'd be super, super wary of that. And to your point, though, if it works, I could adopt it. If it was if putting on a suit with a bunch of electrodes on me got me in better shape in less time, I could bring it in and I would still have accountability and specificity built around it. It would be like, how do you use it, right?
Yeah.
How many times a week do you need to come in based on your goals? That's what we do. That's never changing. The tech, the exercise science, the everything else around it, the customer experience, all that's going to evolve, but the brand promise won't be disrupted. It hasn't for 31 years. So I love that point.
Yes, and I want to speak to that a little bit because it reminds me of, do you remember those little belts back in like the late 90s, early 2000s?
Like
throw
the
a little
belly
gel
belt
on
thing?
them. Yeah, turn it on, get your six-pack
Buy it on
abs.
QVC.
Well, it's funny because our entire population isn't walking around with six-pack abs.
Right. I know.
Yeah.
I know. Well, I'm telling you, man, it's like, I don't know. Anyway, that stuff gets frustrating because I just feel bad for.
You had one of those, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I feel bad because it didn't work. And I had to earn my raging six-pack that I now carry around with me as a burden more than anything. It was through hard work. Hard work, Clay.
Hard work and dedication.
That's it. That's what it's all about, folks. You heard it. You heard it first or last or again. Anyway, anything else you want to add?
I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today again.
Once again. Yeah. Clay's like one of my favorite dudes. He's just a straight dude too. Like, I don't know. Like if you knew us, if you hear us on the podcast and you come meet us in person or I meet you at a conference, there's no difference in the way I act here, there, or anywhere else. Like we are fully transparent and he totally matches our culture. So I appreciate you too, brother. Look at that handshake for those of you guys that aren't watching, that are listening audio. And Clay Allen, ladies and gentlemen, peace.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.